I'm pregnant with number 8, so I need you to watch the herd until I deliver. Thanks. That was it. A scrawled note left on my pristine quartz kitchen island. The handwriting was jagged, hurried, and the sentiment behind it was unbelievably selfish. This piece of paper was the opening salvo in what would become my own personal nightmare. This didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in my dream home, a mid-century modern sanctuary I had closed on just 3 months ago. As an architect, I had spent a decade designing other people's lives while saving every penny to build a space that was entirely, unapologetically mine. It was supposed to be a fortress of solitude, a place where the air smelled of cedar and silence. That Tuesday, at 5:15 p.m., I was driving my Tesla up the winding hill that led to my driveway. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the timber facade. I felt that familiar swell of pride, the kind that comes from years of grind. But as I crested the hill, the feeling evaporated. My front door, which I was religious about locking, was standing ajar. My heart hammered against my ribs. I cut the engine and coasted into the driveway, the gravel crunching loudly in the unnatural quiet. I didn't grab a weapon. I was too confused. I stepped out, my heels clicking on the pavement, and pushed the heavy oak door open. The house was silent. Too silent. But it wasn't empty. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the scent of new wood or fresh paint anymore. It was a sickly, artificial sweetness like cheap grape soda and stale formula. My stomach turned. I walked into the living room, my eyes scanning the space. That's when I saw them. Huddled behind my custom-imported Italian sofa, eyes wide and terrified, were my sister Chloe's offspring. They looked like refugees in a war zone I hadn't signed up for. I counted them quickly, my breath catching in my throat. There was the eldest, staring at his feet, and the others clinging to him. The unruly pack of 6 children plus the toddler, all abandoned in my living room without a single adult in sight. Chloe had shown up unannounced, breached my sanctuary, and vanished. I looked down at the paper in my hand, my knuckles turning white. She thought she could just drop her life on my doorstep and drive away? Not this time. This nightmare hadn't come out of nowhere. It was the inevitable result of years of selfish behavior from Chloe and the enabling silence of our parents. My residence had only been completed a few months earlier. It was my perfect space, a quiet haven where no one would disturb me, where I could devote myself fully to my architectural drafts and enjoy time that was truly my own. That had been my lifelong dream home. But that peace was shattered easily by my sister. With her husband, Mark, away on a long-term Navy assignment, Chloe began dropping off her brood at my place under the flimsy excuse of just for a little while. At first, it was only for a few hours, then half a day. And before long, my weekends from morning to night had turned into chaotic gatherings of 7 noisy children running riot through my minimalist living room. Chloe's Instagram was always curated with filters, filled with perfect mom posts and adorable photos of her growing tribe. Number blessed mom life, number supermom. But I knew what rotted behind that social media facade. Her act of motherhood lasted only for the few minutes it took to get the lighting right and the shutter to click. As soon as the photos were uploaded, the children were left to fend for themselves while she obsessed over engagement metrics and chased her delusion of becoming a lifestyle influencer. Of course, our parents knew the truth, too. Yet, they refused to lift a finger. My mother would sigh into the phone, her voice dripping with passive aggression. "We have our own lives, you know. Besides, you live alone in that massive place. It's only natural for you to help family." Yes. To them, my sacrifice was expected. They preyed on my compassion, knowing I couldn't turn my back on the kids. And so, my sanctuary slowly became a lawless zone for children abandoned by their mother's indifference. Still, I couldn't completely push them away. It was because of those fleeting moments when their eyes would suddenly fill with a profound, quiet loneliness. "Auntie Elena, when is Mommy coming back?" Hearing the eldest, 12-year-old Leo, whisper that from the corner of my Eames lounge chair tore at my heart. These kids weren't to blame. They simply didn't know what stability felt like. If enduring the chaos meant giving them even a small sense of safety, then I could bear it. That's what I told myself again and again as I buried my own feelings. But my kindness was nothing more than a weakness, one that Chloe exploited without hesitation. And then, just a week ago, I finally drew a line in the sand. Chloe had shown up unannounced again, her SUV idling in my driveway, with all 7 kids spilling out like a clown car. Sorry, Elena. I've got this super important brunch with my influencer friends today. Networking, you know? Please watch them till evening. Okay, bye. This time I refused flatly, my hand gripping the doorframe. No, Chloe. I have a critical client presentation today. They're your children. You need to take care of them yourself. But Chloe pretended not to hear me, ushering the kids into my foyer anyway, her eyes glued to her phone screen. All right then, I'm counting on you. She chirped that cheerfully and turned to leave, her high heels clicking rapidly on the slate tiles. While I argued with her at the front door, the kids had already scattered inside like marbles on a hardwood floor. Chloe, wait! I tried to chase after her, but then it happened. From my home office came a sickening crash. A moment later, a scream pierced the air. One of the twins. I rushed into the room. A heavy oak shelf had fallen. I lifted it up, my muscles straining, picked up scattered blueprints, and checked my expensive drafting table for damage. It all took only a few minutes to ensure everyone was safe. When I returned to the living room, breathless and furious, Chloe was gone. Her car, which had been parked in front of the house, had vanished, leaving only tire tracks on my pristine driveway. That's right. In that brief moment of chaos, she had slipped away, leaving all 7 of her children in my house while she went off to her networking lunch. I stood there in stunned silence, my hands trembling. Then, with a cold rage building in my chest, I pulled up my phone and called her. I've had enough. You can't keep using my home as a free daycare for your kids. Don't ever come here again. That was only a week ago. And now, this mass abandonment was her answer to my warning. As I stood there, still clutching Chloe's selfish note, 7 small figures appeared before me. They looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes, as if they had done nothing wrong. The youngest, a 3-year-old boy, was clutching a sticky handful of melted chocolate. Smudges of it stained his cheeks, and worse, the custom silk wallpaper of my living room. Only Leo, the 1-2-year-old, averted his gaze awkwardly, shame coloring his cheeks. Without a word, I turned away from them and headed upstairs toward my office. But when I opened the door, the sight that greeted me froze me in place. My workspace, the beating heart of my career, had been transformed into a macabre playground. There were scribbles all over the walls, crayon hieroglyphics in neon green and purple. My treasured design books, first editions I'd hunted down across Europe, were stacked carelessly on the floor to form a makeshift staircase, little footprints running across their leather spines. And then my eyes landed on something that made my breath catch in my throat, a picture frame lying shattered in the corner. It was my breakthrough design, the Helix Tower concept that had earned me recognition in an international competition, the one that helped me secure enough funding for the down payment on this very house. I had framed the original sketch as a symbol of pride and accomplishment. It had been torn from the wall. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering diamonds, and across the once beautiful, intricate lines, red and blue crayon marks ran wildly in every direction. Parts of the vellum were ripped apart beyond repair. Something inside me snapped. There were no tears, only a cold, burning rage rising from the depths of my chest. Chloe, so this is how far you're willing to go. You trample on my dreams, tear apart my pride, and use your children as shields. No more mercy. You and the parents who have coddled you all your life will pay for this. Calmly, I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. I aimed it at the ruined art print and took a photo. Click. One by one, I began documenting the devastation throughout the house. The drawings on the walls, the scratches on the imported hardwood floor, the spilled juice and toys, the stains in the kitchen. Each image was another piece of evidence, carefully, methodically collected. When I finally finished taking photos, something suddenly came to mind. The security camera. When I built this house, I had installed a high-performance surveillance system by the front door for safety. I quickly opened the app and accessed the recordings. There it was, the footage from the exact time I'd been away. On my phone screen appeared a familiar sight, the front of my house, quiet under the afternoon sun. I pressed play. At 1:15 p.m., Chloe's SUV pulled smoothly into the driveway. That was the very moment I had still been in my client meeting. She got out of the car casually, as if she'd done this countless times before, and began opening the back doors one after another. Like unloading livestock, she ushered her 7 children out one by one. Each child stepped out, holding a toy or a snack, as though they knew exactly what to do. Then Chloe took a white sheet of stationery from the passenger seat, the note, and walked straight toward my front door. And then, unbelievably, she took a key from her pocket and opened the door with ease. A key? When did she? Then I remembered. A few weeks earlier, one of my keys had gone missing from my key case after she'd come to drop the kids off. It had reappeared later on the table, and I had brushed it off as a child's prank. I hadn't realized she'd used that moment to make a duplicate. It had all been planned. In the footage, Chloe emerged from my house just seconds later. She bent down, said something to the children, probably a lie about candy or a game, and then shoved them all inside like cattle. Without stepping in herself, she slammed the heavy oak door shut. Then she got back into her SUV and drove off at full speed without looking back. I stopped the video playback. I didn't need to wonder where she'd gone. I already knew. No doubt she's already running, crying to our parents, spinning a tale about how Elena's being mean and refusing to help family. But I no longer cared. This wasn't a sisterly quarrel anymore. It was a crime. And this time, she won't talk her way out of it. On my phone screen, Chloe's license plate was clearly visible in 4K resolution. I uploaded the footage to the cloud for backup, then opened my phone's dialer. Without hesitation, I tapped 3 numbers. The few seconds before the call connected were the quietest yet most resolute moments of my life. 911. What is your emergency? A calm voice spoke on the other end. I made sure my own voice wasn't shaking before I answered slowly, clearly. I need police assistance. There are 7 children abandoned in my home. It's a case of child neglect and breaking and entering. It was only 10 minutes after I hung up that I saw the flashing blue and red lights through the window. A police car had arrived. I took a deep breath and opened the door. 2 officers stood there, their hands resting on their belts. Are you Miss Elena Vance? We received a report about an incident here. I nodded and led them inside. When they saw the state of the living room, both men fell silent for a moment. The youngest child was still smearing chocolate on the wall. This is extensive, one of them muttered, staring at the scribbles. I quietly handed them Chloe's handwritten note, which still sat on the quartz island. One officer slipped on gloves, picked it up carefully, and read through it. When he finished, his expression was a mixture of disbelief and professional exasperation. Your sister, she left her children here? Yes. And here's the footage that proves it. I showed them the security camera recording on my phone. The entire scene of Chloe unlocking the door with a duplicate key, shoving the children inside, and driving off played out in undeniable clarity. Both officers watched the screen intently, their faces hardening as the video played. When it ended, the senior officer spoke gravely. This is a serious case of child neglect and unlawful entry. You did the right thing calling us. For your sake, and for the children's. His words loosened something tight inside me. For the first time that day, I exhaled slightly. We'll contact their parents ourselves. And in situations like this, we're required to report it to CPS. A social worker will be here soon. Just as he said, within 20 minutes, a calm, professional-looking woman arrived at my door. She was a CPS caseworker. She knelt down and spoke gently to the 7 children huddled in the corner of the living room. I know this must be scary, but it's going to be okay now. After exchanging a few quiet words with the officers, she turned to me. The children will be placed in emergency temporary care tonight. Their emotional well-being is our top priority. You should take some time to rest, too. Following her lead, the children were escorted out by the officers. As they left, Leo looked back, his voice trembling. Where's Mommy? That simple question struck deep into my chest. They had done nothing wrong. The blame lay entirely with their mother, Chloe, and with the adults who had enabled her. Once the house returned to silence, I let out a long breath. 30 minutes later, my phone rang sharply. The name on the screen, Mother. Feeling the storm that was about to break, I pressed the call button. Elena, what on earth have you done? The shrill, hysterical voice on the other end nearly pierced my eardrum. The police must have already contacted her. There was not a trace of concern for the children in her tone. Only raw anger and accusation aimed squarely at me. Don't you feel sorry for Chloe? She's pregnant and she's been through so much already. Mom, please calm down and listen. Chloe committed a crime, She abandoned her children, broke into my home, and destroyed my property. What I did was the lawful, necessary response. My calm explanation only fueled her outrage. A crime? Are you serious? Just because your precious house got a little messy, you're calling your own sister a criminal? All she asked was a little help. You live alone in that big fancy fortress. How hard could it be to look after your nieces and nephews for a while? You're so cold, so selfish. Of course. They hadn't changed, not one bit. It had always been this way. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I endured, Chloe was always the one praised and pitied. Whenever I tried to speak up, I was scolded for being unfeeling. Whenever Chloe made a mistake, someone else was always blamed. You're the eldest daughter. You should be the one to endure. How many injustices had I swallowed because of those words? Who's really the selfish one here, I wonder? I replied quietly, but firmly. So, where is Chloe now? Let me guess. She's at your house, isn't she? I heard my mother gasp on the other end of the line. A few seconds of silence passed before she answered, her voice trembling. I don't know. Maybe she ran off somewhere because you pushed her too far. If anything happens to Chloe, how will you take responsibility? I let out a short, bitter laugh. Of course. Even now, even after all this, they were still the same. You're the ones who raised Chloe into the monster she's become. I'm done. I'm done being your good daughter, your convenient older sister. It ends today. What? What did you just say? You heard me. I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. Chloe and the parents who made her what she is, you'll all be held accountable. Don't ever contact me again. Before she could scream another word, I hung up. Moments later, my phone began buzzing again. This time, it was my father. I declined the call. Then I powered off my phone, sank deep into the Eames lounge chair, and exhaled slowly. To my surprise, I felt completely calm. There was no grief, no sorrow over losing my family, only resolve, a quiet determination to reclaim my dignity and what was rightfully mine. The next morning, I visited the prestigious law firm of Reynolds and Associates. Attorney Reynolds listened to my entire story without interruption, her expression a mask of measured professional calm. I laid out the evidence, the photos I had taken of the ruined blueprints, the security camera footage, and a copy of Chloe's scrawled note. She reviewed each one carefully, her brows knitting tighter as she went. This is appalling, utterly one-sided and malicious. After reviewing all the documents, she murmured quietly, I'm not seeking leniency. I want my sister to be punished according to the law, and I want full compensation for the damage she's caused. She nodded firmly at my words. I understand completely. Here's how we should proceed. The criminal investigation is being handled by the police and CPS, but we'll also file a civil suit that will cover the cost of repairs, compensation for destroyed property, and damages for your emotional distress. She spread a document across the mahogany conference table. For the property damage, we'll get a professional estimate. As for emotional damages, having your private sanctuary violated, your lifelong dream destroyed case precedents suggest we can pursue a substantial claim. This isn't just about money, Elena. It's about asserting the value of your dignity. Her words washed away the last traces of hesitation in my heart. We'll also assist fully with the criminal proceedings. Whatever defense Chloe's side attempts, the footage is irrefutable evidence of both neglect and unlawful entry. This is frankly a very strong case. Thank you, that's reassuring. But Elena, understand this. By doing this, you're making your family your opponents in court. Are you prepared for that? The legal fees alone will be significant, though we will seek to have them covered by the defendant. She looked straight into my eyes. I didn't hesitate for even a second. Absolutely. And with that, I signed the contract, the beginning of my formal, all-out counterattack against Chloe. That afternoon, my phone rang again. The number displayed was unfamiliar. International. Cautious, I answered. A voice I hadn't expected came through, low and subdued. Elena, it's me, Mark. It was Chloe's husband. But his tone was unlike the cheerful man I remembered from family barbecues. His voice was heavy, restrained, almost broken. Mark, how did you get this number? CPS contacted me. They told me what happened, that Chloe abandoned the kids at your house and that you called the police. Is it all true? His voice wasn't angry at me. It was exhausted, filled with quiet despair. Yes, I said softly. Every word of it is true. He let out a long, weary sigh. I see. So, it finally came to this. The words carried both resignation and a strange sense of acceptance. Elena, I'm sorry. Truly. I knew how much you'd sacrificed for Chloe and the children, and I chose to look away. I kept telling myself she'd calm down someday, that things would get better. I was a fool. I didn't know what to say, so I waited, listening in silence as he continued, his voice fading to almost a whisper. But I never realized how deep it went. Her spending, her lies, her utter irresponsibility as a mother. I didn't know Chloe had fallen that far. I've been working overseas for years, serving my country, sending almost everything I earned back home. I just learned from the CPS report that the money I sent wasn't used for the children at all. It was blown on designer bags and beauty treatments to maintain her social media facade. This time, she crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. I filed for emergency leave, Mark said, his voice trembling slightly. As soon as it's approved, I'm flying back to the US, and when I do, I'm divorcing Chloe. His words were abrupt, but there was no hesitation in his tone. I'm truly sorry for everything you've been dragged into, Elena, but I have one thing to ask of you. I will fight for custody battle of the children no matter what. Until then, please protect them. Keep them safe. It was an earnest, desperate plea, a father's final act of integrity. I could feel his resolve, and I nodded silently, even though he couldn't see me. All right, Mark. I promise. That call marked a turning point. My battle was no longer just about reclaiming my own dignity or enforcing accountability. It had become a fight for justice, a fight to rescue 7 innocent children from their neglectful mother and return them to a father who still had the courage to care. That weekend afternoon, a violent pounding shattered the stillness of my home. Bang, bang, bang. Each blow against the door echoed like thunder. When I checked the monitor, I saw them. Chloe, her face contorted in fury, and behind her, my parents. The lawsuit must have reached them. So, Chloe had been hiding at their house all along. My mother's lie was fully exposed. I exhaled slowly, then walked toward the door. The moment I opened it, Chloe lunged forward, shouting as if to claw at me. Elena, are you serious? You're actually suing your own sister? Have you completely lost your mind? The only one who's lost her mind is you, Chloe. You abandoned your children in my house, and you dare lecture me about family? My calm, cutting tone silenced her for an instant, but my mother quickly stepped in to defend her. How can you say such things? Chloe came to you for help, and instead of being there for her, you called the police and now this lawsuit. Are you trying to destroy this family? Destroy it? I met her eyes squarely. I didn't destroy anything. You did. You're the ones who let Chloe's behavior go unchecked, who looked the other way, who blamed everyone else. And now you're condemning me, the victim. It is you who have rotted this family. Why you? My father, who had been silent until then, stepped forward, his face flushed red. You call yourself an older sister, yet you won't even help your own sibling, you ungrateful brat. Do you have any idea who raised you? That final phrase broke something inside me, the last door in my heart, thrown wide open. Gratitude? I've repaid every ounce of gratitude I ever owed. I'm done being your scapegoat. I looked at each of them in turn. My sister, my mother, my father. Shock, anger, and just barely, fear flashed across their faces. Get out! Leave my house now. If you continue to trespass, I won't hesitate to call the police again. I closed the door firmly with finality. Their muffled shouting carried on from the other side, but none of it reached me anymore. That day, I severed the last chain of blood that had bound me for a lifetime. A few weeks later, the custody battle and civil trial began. The security camera footage was undeniable. Chloe's crime was laid bare for all to see. When the evidence played, Chloe and my parents sat pale and wordless, the truth leaving them nowhere to run. The verdict: complete victory. Chloe lost custody of her children, and the court granted Mark full parental rights. My civil suit, too, was upheld in nearly every aspect. Chloe was ordered to pay the full cost of home repairs, replace the destroyed artwork and furniture, and compensate me for the emotional trauma she had caused a figure the judge described as substantial. Outside the courthouse, Mark stood waiting with his 7 children. His voice broke as he spoke. Elena, thank you. Truly. Without you, I never could have saved them. The children huddled close to him, still uncertain, but relieved. Safe at last, they would begin a new life together, away from chaos. As I watched their small figures run to their father, I knew with absolute certainty that my fight had been the right one. After the divorce, Chloe gave birth to her 8th child. She now lives alone as a single mother, but the crushing weight of the damages and legal fees has left her in ruin. The glamorous life she flaunted on social media facade has vanished. Her accounts, once filled with smiling photos and brand names, have been deleted entirely. As for my parents, they sold their longtime home to cover her debts and now scrape by in a small apartment. Their twilight years spent paying for the daughter they refused to discipline. They once called me ungrateful. Now they've given up everything to protect the child who destroyed them. And strangely enough, I feel no pity. This is simply karma, the natural consequence of their choices. What I had gained was a rock-solid confidence that no one should ever intrude on my life, not even family. And above all, I have gotten an irreplaceable, calm, and quiet everyday life in my restored dream home.